Hello everybody, I may present myself as a happy loser. And I want to invite you also to become happy losers. Because, why? Because it feels good and it gives you a lot of energy for the next fight. So if you are all convinced, I can go again, but maybe not. So I will use my 14 minutes now to share with you my idea why it makes sense to be a happy loser. And I will tell you a story which is a lot of my story, but maybe also stories of many others. It's a story about being active, losing, and still really feeling good. And maybe that has to do with my citizenship. I'm a citizen of Sweden, I'm a citizen of Switzerland, and in these two citizenships included are many rights. I can sign citizen initiatives, I can vote on many referendums, and I must say I have lost most of them. I have many of these initiatives I subscribed for many years ago, they have never been implemented. And many votes I was participating in, the majority was on the other side. And this is hard, but it's also easy, because when you experience that in a certain amount, you feel really that it makes sense. And one specific story I want to share with you, which is quite a long time ago, when I was a little bit younger, about 30 years ago. I was part of a group of young people in Switzerland at that time who didn't really understood the sense of having the biggest army in Europe. And we questioned that, and we proposed reforms, and everybody said, no, this army is Switzerland. Switzerland hasn't an army. Switzerland is an army. And that made us a little bit reflecting, how can we change this mind? How can we change this idea of making a country an army? So we started a citizen initiative, the Citizen Initiative for Switzerland without an army. And of course, that wasn't very popular with most people. People would say, you are just against our country, you're against our values. And we had to gather signatures, 100,000 signatures we had to gather within 18 months to get a national referendum to change the constitution, which we proposed is written into Switzerland doesn't have an army. So that was a hard fight. It took several years, and most people wouldn't sign, but we gathered these 100,000 signatures, and in the end we got the vote. We got the vote on the 26th of November 1989. It was 2 weeks after the fall of the Berlin Wall. It was in the middle of a new start for Europe, and we got in this vote. We were prospected to get like 5–10%. We got 35.2% of the vote, and you should have seen that. The winners, they were so sad, and the losers were so happy. And that was really a fundamental experience for me, which changed my perspective on how democracy works. Because this is about democracy, it's about power, it's about people power. And this is an issue which all over the world today is, of course, of big relevance. You know that very well in this country, in this state, in these municipalities. I followed your path towards democracy in the last 30 years. From time to time, I've been involved in certain projects, have been discussing a lot, and I understand that it's not so easy to become a happy loser, because you can do a lot of things wrong in a process. You can make voting just more symbolic. You can follow a decision or not. And this is an issue which all over the world really makes me sometimes both concerned and both impressed about how people deal with that. Just a little other story. I was following the independence referendum in Greenland 6 years ago. And these people in Greenland, it's a big country. It's bigger almost than Europe, but only 60,000 people. So to organize a referendum on this island is quite a cumbersome thing. And I was so impressed that they have even a voting station on a sledge with ducks, which is going over the ice. So to bring the voting material to these sledges, they had to parachute the voting station to them with a mobile fax. And they invested so much to make every voice, every vote counted. And this is exactly what makes many people so angry, that they feel that their vote is not really counted. And in many elections around the world, this is still done very wrongly. But at the same time, it's also about when you start this type of process, when you start to really vote on things and not just follow how others are voting or deciding, you feel that sometimes losing is like losing everything. You are educated to win or to lose, and lose is bad and winning is good. And so many people in many places, they go out on the streets after an election and say, no, no, we cannot accept that. Their leaders say, we don't accept it. We will try to keep on our power. And this has been an issue which this man has understood. He's from Sudan. His name is Mo Ibrahim. He's a Sudanese-British businessman, and he has introduced in 2005 a prize for happy losers. And this prize is quite a good prize. I would like to get it. It's a prize, gives you $5 million US. And it's not, of course, for people like me. It's for African presidents who want to keep on power. You have seen in many countries, most recently in Burundi, when the president, after 2 terms, has to finish, he doesn't finish. He wants to change the constitution. He wants to keep on. And this creates a lot of confrontation, a lot of problems, a lot of conflict. And this prize of Mo Ibrahim hasn't been given so many times because he hasn't seen so many happy losers, so many good people really accepting the rules. But we have also other examples around the world recently. Just a few weeks ago in Myanmar, in Burma, the military chief, the president of the country, Thein Sein, he congratulated Aung San Suu Kyi, the Nobel Prize winner of 1991, to her victorious victory in the democratic election, the first democratic election since 1991. And the military was the worst in many ways. They suppressed the people. They really made everything against, and now suddenly they understood the time has changed. They have to give away their power. They have to congratulate the winner. And this was quite a symbolic, important feature, of course, for this part of the world. We have other examples. Mr. Goodluck Jonathan, he was the president of Nigeria, a country where elections have been corrupt for many, many years. But last year, to the surprise of his own people, of the country, he accepted a loss to Muhammadu Buhari in the elections. And he said, congratulations, now it's your turn. And most recently also, not so far from here, in Tunisia, the Islamist party, as in other countries after Arab Spring, won the election, and they won the power. But they had to see and to understand that they have to share power to win the peace and the future of the country. So Rachid Al-Qanouchi, he resigned voluntarily, and they agreed on a dialogue. And this dialogue has now got the Nobel Peace Prize, which will be given in a few weeks. So it's basically the first Nobel Peace Prize for happy losers. And we have other people like he is really very, very special. He's a senator from Arizona, but he was after another man. Look at that. And he wanted to make him not the president. He wanted to become the president. And he was very angry in the discussions. His people were shouting terrorist to Obama, Arab. But then, and that's, I would say, it's one of the really surprising things sometimes that you see in this ugly beast called American democracy, some unlikely beauties when John McCain conceded seconds after he understood that he lost the presidential election.
Tonight, more than any night, I hold in my heart nothing but love for this country and for all its citizens. Whether they supported me or Senator Obama, I wish Godspeed to the man who was my former opponent and will be my president. And I call on all Americans, as I have often in this campaign, to not despair of our present difficulties, but to believe always in the promise and greatness of America, because nothing is inevitable here. Americans never quit. We never surrender. We never hide from history. We make history. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you all very much.
Yes, that's a happy loser of our times. We had 2,500 years ago another happy loser. It was Pericles. He was also a military man. But he introduced the very idea that democracy differs from other state ruling systems because of one thing, that you have dialogue before decision. And that was his fundamental idea, which until today is of highest importance. The power of dialogue changed everything, because when you have been heard, if you can make your voice heard before a decision, this makes a difference. But this means also dialogue is not something which is isolated. You have to link it to a decision. Another very famous person I had to find on a Swiss island, Saint-Pierre, is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and I asked him, what's also important? He said, popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty means that we have to be involved in lawmaking. We have to have the right to have an influence on those laws we are to live with. And we have a third aspect, the human rights, which have been out of the history developed, that every single citizen have a human right, so not the majority can go against this. So together we can see that a modern democracy of today needs protection, needs delegation for practical reasons, but also participation. And this third aspect of participation, binding participation of clear rules, this is something I think we have to develop much more today. Because we see, today we feel all a little bit democracy, that's something coming in the future. We have experienced so bad things in the last days, last weeks, terrorist attacks, that the leaders, they are now very helpless. They are talking about war on terror, on the situation of war, to limit our democratic rights. And this helplessness, this is something we have to develop into a proper democracy by being happy losers. And that means three things. We need to go much more into what we as citizens, as individuals, have rights and how we can support them. I feel very often in my work also as a member of a city government that it's really the individual citizen we have to support. We are used that parliamentarians have an infrastructure, but individual citizens have very little infrastructure to make their voice heard and to make their real responsibility heard. And we need to go much more local. The local level is where we are citizens of the local community, but also the region, the nation, and Europe. And finally, we have to go transnational. Transnational democracy is something, and participatory transnational democracy is something which is so important because so many issues are decided there. I fought for more than 20 years for the introduction of the European Citizens Initiative, which is the right for 1 million people to set an agenda point on the European level. Many people say this is nothing, it's just advisory, it's just the idea you can bring forward. And of course, the initial experiences are very, very limited. But, as somebody has also said it, it's a baby step towards more democracy. And this is maybe the key issue when we are talking about how to develop democracy, how to become happy losers. Because maybe you're still not convinced, and I would like to share with you a final brief story. And this story is basically, everybody of us has experienced that, but we don't really remember. But I remember when my two small daughters, Nina and Vanya, they made their first steps. They stand up, and they fall down, and they were a little bit afraid what happened now. But then they looked at me and they were so happy, and they got so much power. They got this experience of failing, of stumbling, of going down, and then to feel that I could, for a few seconds, do something. This is the energy we need, and this is the energy we maybe have all in us, but we need and we can do it in our democracies if we are ready to develop it, and especially if we are ready to become happy losers, because this, as Mr. McCain has said it for America, I said it for the whole world, that we, as happy losers, will never surrender. We will hide from history. We will make history, and we can move the world. Thank you very much.